topic is about the intestines. I got my research from the Smithsonian Encyclopedia of Knowledge. Our intestines is one of the most important parts of our digestive system, and we have two types of intestines, the small intestine and the large intestine. In order to learn more about these, the intestines and their process, let's move on to my first fact called absorbing food. There are tiny finger-like growths inside of the intestines, also called villi. Each of these little villi are kind of like finger-like growths. So that picture is villi inside of the intestines without any really close up, but this is a close up. The villi can include food molecules and it can also include blood vessels. This is because the molecules will pass into the blood vessels in order to transport food molecules to other places inside your body. This is why the blood vessels are also a very important part of your body to digest different types of foods. But you might wonder what food molecules are. Food molecules are very small, so you can't see them. They're produced by the villi, which will absorb them. They are included inside of digestion. There's 3 types of food molecules, which I'm going to talk about in one of my next facts. So there's the sugar food molecule, the protein molecule, and the fat molecule. Let's move on to my next fact called the chemical attack. There is also the chemical attack inside of our process of the small and large intestine. Imagine this big picture of the gallbladder was on top of the stomach and also the intestines. I'm going to explain some facts to you to explain the process of how the gallbladder goes with the stomach and intestines. We might have heard of the intestines and stomachs before, but we might not have heard of the gallbladder and how it helps our body. Some facts are, when the food leaves the stomach right here and enters the intestines, it is mixed with powerful chemicals. Sometimes we think of chemicals as something bad, but this chemical is actually good, which can help go with our process of the intestines. Then, the chemicals are created by the pancreas and also the gallbladder. So imagine this part and the tannish part, which is the gallbladder and the pancreas combined. These can both create chemicals. The gallbladder will produce a green liquid that goes through the bile, which is the line right there. That is called the bile duct. The bile duct changes fats into tiny droplets. So the tiny droplets will then go through the bile duct because these are way easier to digest rather than big blobs of a type of food or food molecules. Then the pancreas will create enzymes which will fight anything bad off the food, which can also help you keep healthy. My next fact is about small and large intestines. Right here I have a picture of the small and large intestines. The dark pink is the large intestine, while the light pink is the small intestine. You might think the small intestine looks bigger just because it looks longer, but the large intestine is actually twice its width. Each of these has its own purpose because they connect together, first the small intestine and then the big intestine or the large intestine, to create the process which I'm going to talk about in one of my next facts. So, since each of the intestines has its own purpose, the large intestine is meant for creating watery leftovers, which turns into feces, also part of taking time. So the leftovers are like your poop and pee or sometimes diarrhea if you eat unhealthy things. These are all like the watery leftovers or your leftovers that will get produced by the large intestine, while the small intestine does most of the work digesting, and then it also connects to the larger intestine, which is after the small intestine, and it also helps absorb food, which I talked about in one of my last facts. The intestines run all the way from the stomach, which is where all your food goes when you swallow, and they run all the way to the anus, which is when you poop or pee out. So each of boys and girls have this anus in order to extract each of their poop and pee, because we all go potty. Now let's talk about how digestion works. As I said, there are 3 types of food molecules: the fat molecules, the protein molecules, and the carb molecules. You get a chance to see what this molecule looks like up close. So each of them break into smaller parts until they become acids. So each of them are acids. So this was the glycerol acids, which is a syrupy liquid, also contained in oils and fats. That is a fat acid. That is the protein acid, which is the little bits of proteins inside of the food molecule of protein. And then the monosaccharide is the carb molecule, or the carbohydrate acid. And each of these acids are made from the polysaccharide, the protein, and also the fat molecule. Each of these are full-grown molecules. As you can see, the glycerol and the fatty acids equals the fat molecule, while if the amino acids become peptides, and then it becomes the whole protein line, or the circular acids, then that equals the protein acid. And then the monosaccharide keeps going and going with all the hexagons or all the polygons in order to form the big group of the carb acids and molecules. All of these food molecules are combined to create your food and how it is. The sugar acid is also shaped like the carb acid. And then the nutrition inside of food are gigantic molecules. So that's why we need to break them down in order to digest. So as you can see, they are all very big, so that's why we need to break them down. So then the digestion can break these down, so it takes them and dissolves them into much smaller bits. So it then dissolves into, for example, the tiny protein circles. After that, they will enter once they dissolve, they enter the bloodstream, and then the digestive chemicals called enzymes will break the food down. So the enzymes won't have to break something necessarily bad, but they break them down in order to digest them. Let's talk about taking time. It does take time to digest different types of food. From breakfast to lunch to dinner, we have to digest different types of foods. And just digesting one meal, it can even take from 20 to 44 hours. But this does depend on what type of food it is. If for breakfast you eat more of like bread or fruit, then it'll probably take less time to digest. But for dinner, you might eat more meat, so it takes a longer time to digest. This is because fruit and vegetables digest and pass through more quickly because they might be like easier to chew, but meat might be like really chewy, and if you ever ate steak from the steakhouse, you might have to chew it for a long time until you can swallow, because you can't swallow it in one bite. The meat is harder to digest, so that's why it might take more time to digest through your body. Let's look at this diagram on my left. This is the process of digestion, and as I said, the process begins from the stomach, to the small intestine, and to the large intestine. And first, once the food enters the stomach, it kind of breaks down into its food molecules. Once it breaks down into its food molecules, it's just that little tiny food molecule, so you won't have to digest it in a really big blob. And then it goes down the smooth small intestine first, and then that's where the nutrition goes. And then after that, it goes through the large intestine, which is where the large intestine is where all the feces and leftovers will go through, and then you extract it, which is your poop and your pee. In conclusion, I think our intestines have helped a lot in our digestion, and I learned about how they're one of the most important parts of our digestive system. We have our large intestine and our small intestine, which work together to slowly create our extraction, which is our poop and pee. Even though my PC has been acting weird and it kept blacking out, I hope you learned a lot about my topic.